Hi, it's Jan Howell, and welcome back to my channel, and welcome back to my sewing room. In this video tutorial, I'm going to go over some things you'll want to know before you sew. Those of you who are beginners, and if you've been sewing a while, these are some good things to implement if you haven't already. I'm going to be going over my top 10 sewing tips. Of course, there's more than 10 tips that I have. Hopefully, you're getting those tips and tricks in my other sewing tutorials. These tips aren't in any specific order, so I encourage you to watch the whole video so you make sure you're getting all the good stuff. I have been sewing a long time, since junior high school, and have enjoyed it, and it's come in handy for so many things. Even if you don't plan on being a professional seamstress, knowing how to sew is a good thing. So without any further ado, let's get right into those tips and tricks. So one of the first things I want to talk about is you don't have to have a real expensive, fancy sewing machine. If you're new to sewing and you don't have a sewing machine, I encourage you to check out used sewing machines or just get a sewing machine that has all the basic stitches. The sewing machines for all basic needs you can pick one up pretty cheap. So this machine right here, I have had a long time, and it has just pretty much the basic sewing stitches. I bought it used, and I have done a lot of sewing on this. It has held up really well. Like I say, it just has the basic stitches, but I still use this. And over the years, I have purchased some other machines and upgraded, and I will go over in another tutorial how to pick out the right machine. So there's all kinds of sewing machines, a lot of different brands, and it can get kind of confusing. But don't let it overwhelm you. Just get something that feels comfortable. I encourage you, if you can, to go into a sewing machine store where they have different models and makes and try them out. Because some you think they're going to sew well or they just don't feel right. You'll be able to tell. And then you can go from there. And as you can and want to upgrade and have the money, you can also add a serger, which I recommend when you can. They're a good thing and can come in handy. The next tip is get familiar with your sewing machine. If you buy it used, I'm sure it's going to come with a owner's manual. If not, nowadays you can just get online and download your particular model. It's going to go over specific ways to thread your machine and give you things to troubleshoot. So don't be afraid to look at your manuals, keep them handy, and look at them. And most likely you can get on YouTube and find a tutorial on your specific model of machine as well. Another tip about your sewing machine is get familiar with the feet that it comes with. Now you might be looking at some of these gadgets and wonder, what in the heck and how do I use these? They are really quite handy, and you can do some really cool stuff with these feet. And your sewing machine will come with most of these basic sewing machine feet. And I go over all these feet and how to use them in another tutorial. So make sure you check that out when you're first starting out. I encourage you to get the basic sewing supplies. They don't cost a lot of money, and I have a tutorial and a post on my website showing you the basic supplies and materials that I do recommend you have. The next tip is, if you're not familiar with a rotary cutter, I encourage you to get a rotary cutter and a mat. And I have some links of the ones I prefer in the description below, but you don't have to have anything crazy or expensive. You can get all kinds of mats, and I have a tutorial going over rotary cutting as well. If you're cutting out straight lines and straight edges, a rotary cutter and a mat and a ruler really come in handy. So a tip about taking care of your sewing machine and knowing how to thread it, knowing how to troubleshoot. If it's not working, I have a tutorial on that as well, going into the specifics. But a sewing machine is a machine that needs to be maintained, cleaned, and taken care of. Your sewing machine handbook will go over specifics about how to do that. And I do encourage you to have it serviced once in a while to make sure the tension is right. And I do have a troubleshooting tutorial that gives you some great ideas in case you have some of these things that come up, your stitch isn't right, or you're having thread nesting going on. It can be something really simple as having the bobbin not threaded right, or sometimes you just need to rethread the machine. You may not know that there are different types of needles for your machine for different types of fabric, and that will make a huge difference in the way that your sewing machine performs and the stitch that you get. For example, if you were to use a regular sewing machine needle on knit fabric that's not ballpoint or specific for that fabric, you can put holes in your fabric and you're not going to get a good stitch. Same if you were to use a jersey or a micro text needle on cotton fabric, you won't have a really good stitch. I have a nice handy free printable on my website. I'll put the link in the description below where you can print this out. Keep it on your bulletin board or somewhere in your sewing room where you can see it. And I also have, there's a little one that you can put in your wallet when you're at the store if you need to buy needles. And if you're using different types of needles on your machine, sometimes it can get confusing on what type of needle is in your machine. I have a handy little pincushion that you can make. I have the printable that you can get that where you can keep track of the needles that are in your machine. And so that's really handy because it's really hard to see that print on the needle to see what kind of needle is in there. I like to keep a bunch of fabric scraps near my machine so that I can, when I'm using a different stitch or a different color of thread, I can try it on a piece of scrap fabric first. Then I'm not ruining my fabric or my project. You may be thinking that sewing is very expensive because I have to buy this expensive fabric by the yard. For those of you who've been following me for a while, know that I like to use upcycled and recycled clothing for the fabric. Upcycled t-shirts, sweaters, jeans, all kinds of things you can make and save money. I've even purchased new big skirts or dresses that have good quality knit and they're a large size for the fabric. And one thing I want you to know is you are going to make mistakes. Even I make mistakes and I use this seam ripper frequently, and there's nothing wrong with that. The more you sew, the better you get, the less mistakes you make, but you are going to make mistakes. So when you do make these mistakes, don't let it freak you out. Get out your seam ripper, and I have some tips on how to do that easily, and just be okay with it. Part of the sewing process, and it's going to happen. Another tip is just to take your time, find a place where you can sew. You don't have to have a specific sewing room. Get out your sewing machine, put it on your table, and just that's your sewing space for the time of your project. I did it for years. And when you're finished, you can put it all away. Knowing how to sew, even the basic things, is a good thing. You'll be able to sew for yourself, not necessarily clothing, but to mend things, to make a few things for your home. And what's really fun is that you can make things that are unique, something that you don't see every day, whether it's using new fabric or upcycled materials. If you would like more details on basic sewing skills, make sure you check out my Sew Simple courses. I'll put the link in the description below. As always, if you have any questions or concerns, leave a comment in the comments below. Let me know what you want to learn about or you're having problems with, and I'll put that on my list of tutorials for you. If you found this tutorial helpful, make sure you give it a thumbs up, like, and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Get out your sewing machine or go find a used or new machine and have fun sewing. Thanks so much for watching. Have a wonderful day, and we'll see you next time.